Hello everyone! Today we maliciously comply with people who want to eat samosas, fire everyone and hold the sour cream. Please subscribe for daily videos with the best stories from all over Reddit. Let's go! The first story is by CrackSnap7. You want the exact amount, you get the exact amount. When I was 13 or 14, I decided I wanted a PS3. My dad refused to buy me one, but my uncle made me an offer I couldn't refuse. He said if I worked at his sweet shop for the 2 months of summer break, he would buy me a PS3 and some games. For teenage me, with no commitments, this seemed fantastic. My uncle sold a kind of specialty snack known as a mini samosa in his shop. They're like samosas, but smaller. They were sold by weight in sealed packs of 250 grams and half a kilo, as these were the most common amounts people bought. Making those packages turned out to be my job. You see, sometime between now and when my uncle started his business, he realized that 250 grams were roughly a weight of 28 mini samosas, and thus 56 were 500 grams. So instead of weighing each packet, I was told to just pack by counting individual item, which was easier and saved time. We also sold them individually for people who wanted larger, smaller, or unusual amounts. This was also around the time when our government started airing customer awareness PSAs, basically just telling customers to beware of fraudulent business people. This is relevant. So, one particularly hot afternoon, it was just me and my uncle in the shop. In India, frequent power cuts were very common during summers, and thus there were no fans or AC running. Both tempers and temperatures were running high at the shop that day. It was then that the villain of our story, Mr. Karan, made his entry. He was a local resident and a regular. He seemed angry from the onset when he barged into the shop. He took a look at the fans and saw that they weren't running, then angrily picked up a 500 gram pack of samosas and asked, "How many samosas are in this thing?" "That's 500 grams, I said. "I said, how many, not how much," Mr. Karan literally screamed. "Again, how many in this?" 56, I replied immediately, since, I packed them. "How can you be so sure? You didn't even count. You're trying to cheat me." Mr. Karan was now in full-scale Karen mode. "I demand you pack me 500 grams of those individual ones and don't you dare cheat me again." I looked over at my uncle, wet with sweat, fanning himself with yesterday's newspaper. He slowly nodded. I beamed a huge smile. "Sure, sir, whatever you want." So, I took a bag, picked up some samosas and started putting them on the balance. I kept counting samosas as I put them in until they were a little over 500 grams. Then I removed the last samosa and the weight fell below 500. Now, keeping eye contact with Mr. Karan, I crushed the samosa and started putting its powdery remains in the bag until it was exactly 500 grams. But wait, there is more to this story. Mr. Karan apparently didn't seem to mind powdered samosa, but instead asked smugly, "So, how many samosas now?" 48, I claimed triumphantly. You see, sometime in the past, my uncle's old chef retired and the new chef made samosas with a little bit more filling in them. They looked the same size on the outside and only weighed a couple grams more each. And since he made them in bulk and also sold to other shops in the area, the price wasn't too much of an issue, so my uncle let it slide. But those couple grams added up on mass orders, and that's what Mr. Karan found out the hard way. He looked sheepishly at the pre-packed samosas and then at his own package and asked if he could buy the former instead. "No, my nephew made a package specially for you at your own request, so that is what you have to buy," my uncle finally spoke. Mr. Karan silently took his pack, paid, and left. He was a lot more respectful during his subsequent visits. Man, I hope you have generator or something so the fridges do not stop working. Otherwise, Mr. Karan would have to find out about that the way even harder. As per my NDA, I am not allowed to discuss this position with former employers. Since my firing is effective immediately, you're now a former employer. Gather round as I tell you the story of the time I got fired and the worst place I have ever worked. From day one, It was a nightmare. There was zero onboarding or training. I was simply given the login, info for a couple of different websites, and told to get to work. This company planned large conferences and I was in charge of speaker coordination. I was the only person in this role. The information solely resided with me. Not a big deal, I say to myself. I'm good at thinking on my feet. I'll just ask questions when I need clarification on something. That turned out to be impossible. My manager's first language wasn't English. I'm all for learning new languages. I think it's a great skill to have and it takes a lot of work, and being able to speak multiple languages is impressive. The problem was that her English was so poor that it was often very hard to understand what she was trying to say. I once asked if she had time to hop on a call and explain something to me, and she responded with, "No, self-skills is a must. I'm a bird without hat." It took me a few days to figure out that she was trying to say that things were hectic, she was running around like a chicken with its head cut off, and she needed me to be self-sufficient. Regardless, I did my best in the position. Small mistakes happened here and there, but overall, all the speakers were very happy and felt well supported. I struggled on the communication with my manager, but I thought the company was happy with my work. Until 4 months in, when I was randomly pulled into a meeting with my manager, HR, and legal. Effective immediately, I was fired. I asked why I was being fired and why this was the first time I heard of any problems. Why wasn't there a write-up or a verbal warning? My manager said that it was because the 10 minutes I ran the statistics it takes me to respond to an email was too slow. That was a bullcrap reason, and we all knew it. If you don't like me personally, fine, but don't try and make it seem like I was a bad employee. To be honest, I was furious. We do the exit interview with HR, and then she asks me to send over any documents I had and describe where I was in it regards to our next event and our speakers. NDAs are legally common in this field. I have signed one at every job I've ever worked, but this employer's NDA had a clause in it that worked to my advantage. I said, "As per my NDA, I am not to discuss intimate details or share documents relating to this position with any employer, past or future. Since this firing was effective immediately, you are now a former employer and I am bound by my NDA." HR hemmed and hawed a little bit, telling me that of course I could speak to them about it. This was about their event. I pulled out my copy of the NDA and pointed out the exact clause and said that it clearly stated that if I violated this NDA, I would be sued. So no, I couldn't talk to them about the position. HR turned to legal, and legal pointed out that I was technically correct. They were a former employer and I was bound by my NDA. They fired me 17 days before the important event. They didn't have time to start over from scratch, and I still keep in contact with some of my coworkers, and apparently the event was a crap show and manager nearly lost her job because of it. Over half the speakers pulled out once communication broke down. All because I take too long to respond to emails. If this story is not a Uno reverse card story, I don't know what story is. Hold the sour cream. In high school, I worked at a Taco Bell almost 20 years ago. Had great customer reviews in the drive-thru and front, worked long hours on Saturday nights, came when expected, all that jazz. This Taco Bell stayed open until 3 a.m., so it was late one night and we were getting ready to start cleaning. Some guy hits the drive-thru and asked for a taco salad. Hold the sour cream. I helped run the cold line, so I did the vegetables, cheese and sauce, boxed it up and bagged it, and just before I grabbed the bag to go to the drive-thru window, I took the sour cream and squirted a dollop into my hand. I did the entire transaction one-handed, clearly holding the sour cream in the other hand with a smile on my face to a dude that drove away doing a triple take as he drove away with the most confused look I have ever seen before. My coworkers were on the floor laughing. I got roped up for it the next day because the guy called 1-800-Taco Bell on me for it. Well, I think it was still worth it. That's it for today. Thank you for listening and subscribe for more.